Hello there. Actually, Sunak should bring calm to the British government. But now a bullying scandal has shaken the cabinet. We haven't heard about scandals for far too long, haven't we? The hopes of the new Conservative British government for calmer waters seem to be crumbling just 2 weeks after Prime Minister Rishi Sunak took office. Because of allegations of bullying against Conservative Minister Gavin Williamson, a government spokesman was forced to reassure on Monday that the Prime Minister had full confidence in the cabinet member. Previously, text messages from him to the Conservative Parliamentary Group leader Wendy Morton had reached the public, in which the sometimes coarse language put pressure on the party colleague. He was reportedly trying to get an invitation to Queen Elizabeth II's funeral in September. According to a report by the Sunday Times, Williamson has since expressed regret about his news. Sunak welcomed this but also described the news as unacceptable. Williamson sits at the cabinet table as Minister of State with no particular portfolio. A Williamson dismissal would raise new doubts about the stability of a Conservative government. Sunak has only been in office since the end of October. Predecessor Liz Truss had to resign under pressure from her own faction because of a failed tax policy. Truss herself only replaced Boris Johnson as Prime Minister at the beginning of September, so she put up a record here. But Sunak will have to prove himself not only on the financial markets but also within the party. For many, he is still considered the proverbial kingslayer because it was only his resignation as Chancellor of the Exchequer that triggered the rebellion within the party that forced Boris Johnson to give up in the summer. As a result, some Tories still consider him a traitor, and now we have another scandal. He also has a difficult time in public without the scandal even. Sunak is a Hindu, the country's first British Asian Prime Minister, and presents himself as a climber from an immigrant family. His grandparents are from Punjab, a former province of British India, in what is now India and Pakistan. His parents were born in Tanzania and Kenya, respectively. In the 1960s, the family moved to Southampton, where his mother worked as a pharmacist and his father as a doctor. Sunak studied at the elite universities of Oxford and Stanford in the UK and in the United States. And before his political career, Sunak worked in finance, including at the investment bank Goldman Sachs. Sunak himself says in a video about his candidacy in the summer, "My family gave me opportunities that they could only dream of." Well, they were pharmacists and doctors, so not that low. He became a politician because everyone in Britain should have the chance to give their children a better future. But his rise to fame quickly cracked. Excerpts from a BBC documentary circulated online showing Sunak in his early 20s. In it, he talks about having friends from the upper class or with aristocratic titles, but none from the working class. He's also happy to encourage children from state schools to later apply to Oxford. He himself, as I said, attended also an elite boarding school as a student. In the class-conscious kingdom, such statements are not exactly image helpful. Suddenly, Sunak seemed less like a likable climber and more like a careerist who lacked traction early on. The picture was confirmed when in July, when visiting a construction site, the choice of his footwear was noticed. Loafers from the luxury brand Prada for more than €500. Finding Sunak, who was still her Chancellor of the Exchequer at the time, on the list annoyed many Britons, especially since it had only become public weeks before that happened that his wife had avoided taxes amounting to millions for years. She was not officially registered in Britain. That's a legal practice, but the opposition Labour Party accused Sunak of hypocrisy. At the same time, he also received a fine in the course of the Partygate affair, so we shouldn't forget this. Together with Johnson and other members of the government, he had violated the corona rules in June 2020 when they celebrated the Prime Minister's birthday together. So another criminal Prime Minister. Sunak's poll numbers fell after he had actually gained a lot of popularity during the pandemic, and contrary to the Conservative Party line, as Chancellor of the Exchequer, he took on new debt, among other things, in order to secure many jobs. Sunak thus benefited above all from his misconduct of his predecessors. His second chance now leads him into office. After Johnson and Truss, he is, so to speak, the third choice of the Tories. He is not elected by the people, but neither of them is in this system, but still. His term of office is unlikely to bring any major reversals, with the exception of the financial policy area. The self-confessed Brexit supporter wants to speed up the breach of the Northern Ireland Protocol, a step that is likely to further strain relations with the EU and might lead to a trade war. He wants to limit the number of refugees in Great Britain and promote the admission agreement or deportation agreement with the African state of Rwanda. He's behind the support for Ukraine and wants to reduce VAT on energy. But still, the same background in the party is still standing behind Sunak, so I don't expect much. And another U-turn we had talked about this was COP27. Yeah, but it will go on like this. I'll see you in my next video. I'll be back.